Okay, we're in focus. Hello. It's once again late at night. Don't get mad. Just is what it is. Um, we did this one yesterday, and then I did this earlier. You maybe can't really tell, but I was working on, actually trying to make something three dimensional uh, and kind of representational as well. I feel like I have to come back in and fix this a little bit. I don't know if I really got the perspective right on it, but this is what we're going to be working on. This will be a little bit of a serious video, maybe a lot of bit of a serious video, um, and so some of the stuff we'll be going into is substance abuse, addiction, um, suicide. I don't even really know how much you can talk about suicide on YouTube. They're kind of fucked, from what I know. And I know it's easy to get, not that I'm making money off these, but demonetized for that kind of stuff, or, uh, just like getting videos taken down and things like that. But I'm also, the smallest fish you can be in a massive pond. So the likelihood of them actually seeing this is probably pretty low. But I also wanted to say that up front so that if you're uncomfortable with any of that, feel free to not watch. Um, and a lot of it is, I'll be talking about it in my experiences, but I'll also be asking a lot of questions that I don't have the answer to, you know? Um, and maybe, this isn't the best platform to do that. And maybe one day, if, my channel ends up being big, I may not want stuff like this on here. But it is, I don't think I'll ever take it down, you know? Um, so, but I'm using this pencil. It's a 5B. I don't really know. I think it's supposed to be pretty soft. I think 5H is like hardness, because HB is right in the middle. Um, and I think H is how hard the lead is, and B is how soft? Question mark. I don't know what B stands for exactly, but I know H stands for hardness. Anyway, this is what we're going to be using. No eraser. I'm not erasing. Um, but yeah. Anyway, we'll start with I have nothing written down. I'm gonna be honest. So a lot of this whole thing is gonna be off the dome. Um, I may talk in circles. I may get sidetracked. I do often get sidetracked. Uh, I do get sidetracked a lot. But we'll start with addiction and substance abuse. Um, and I'll start with my own personal experiences. Uh, I did. I'm 27. I graduated high school in 2016. I didn't. I'm not gonna say I didn't drink in high school. I think I had a sip of Jack Daniels one time. Well, and I did go to a high school party, or I went to a party one time. I didn't really go to parties either. Uh, but yeah, I went to a party one time and drank like a little bit, not enough to even like feel anything. Um, so it was very sparingly, and I never got drunk in high school. Uh, I did smoke weed, high school and college. Um, and then also, it was definitely worse recently in terms of like I got out of the military and it got pretty bad. Uh, I got out of the military. Actually, I think. Well, yesterday may have been. Um, I think yesterday was the 11th or the 12th. But I got out of. I mentioned it in the video the other day. But I got out of the military almost exactly a year ago, February 11th, 2025. Um, and I was chilling at the parents' house for a while up until I moved up here. Currently living in Maine, and that pretty much that whole time period, I consumed a lot of weed. Um, and I have a hit. My family has a history of substance abuse. You know, um, not that like there's so many people that smoke a lot of weed, like, and so sometimes I feel bad for like feeling like it was a problem, but it was. I'm not gonna like. I can't just tell myself that it wasn't a problem, because it was. And even when I got up here for the first little bit, because I moved up here August 1st, and school didn't start until the 25th or like the 27th of August, something like that. So that was a little bit of time where, I could just fuck around if I wanted to, and I did. I didn't fuck around, but I just got high a lot, essentially. Um, I wasn't saying fuck around in like a sexual manner, but just you know making not so great choices. And yeah, I've always had like I feel like coming from a family that has a history of substance abuse. There's like some part of the back of your head that is always like on guard, you know, always weary. Like I did I binge drinked. I did some binge drinking in college and the military. The military's really bad about it. I mean, colleges too. I feel like that's like a college stereotype is just like fucking getting hammered every weekend. Um, and that was the case. It was also the case in the military though, uh, and it's a lot worse in my opinion. Um, which is one of the reasons I got out. It's not really if you for people that have like the tendency to be alcoholics or abuse, substances. The military isn't really a healthy place. I'll be honest. Um, the military did a lot of good for me. It's the reason I'm here in Maine. Arguably, even maybe making this video. Who knows? But it's not a very everyone's coping all the time. It feels like uh, so, but yeah, coming from a family that has like a history of that kind of stuff, there's like almost a wariness that you always have. Like you're almost like looking out for like addictions in a way. Like like I know I'm addicted to caffeine, which that was a I used to drink so many energy drinks. Like like it was bad, bad, bad. Surprised I've never had a heart attack. And I drink a lot of coffee now, and I'm drinking coffee right now. Uh, and then nicotine. I quit smoking cigarettes. I've quit smoking cigarettes a couple times. And then the other day, I was like, I instead of Zins, like why don't I just smoke cigarettes? I feel like I would do it less. Um, and maybe that's better, you know. But then I went to or not the grocery store. I went to the gas station not to get cigarettes. I was just getting Zins actually, and one of like little like THC drinks, which actually I didn't think they would be like as potent as they are because it says like 10 milligrams, but like they get you faded as fuck, surprisingly. So be careful with them. I did drink it pretty fast, so that's probably why. I probably should have sipped on it. But yeah, I went, and the cashier was telling me about how their Marlboro Reds are like $14 a pack now. I was like, holy fuck, that's crazy expensive, and that means a carton is. I said a carton's like 150. That would be. Well, you get. I don't know if it's 10 or 20 packs in a carton. I think it's 10. So if it was 150, it'd be more expensive than just buying 10 packs. Well, Maybe not with tax, but either way, that's expensive as fuck. And like on the spot, I was like, damn, yeah, I'm not doing that. I ain't got that kind of money. The fuck, you know. But yeah, so like, I feel like I'm always like, I have like a tendency. I like want to be addicted to things. Like it's, and I feel like there's like some part of like my genetics that come into play with that. You know, uh, whether it's like, and obviously a lot of it's like, you know, based in like dopamine, or at least that's what like the science will tell you is like, you're just trying to get that hit of dopamine. But like whether it's like porn or nicotine or alcohol or like being high, things like that. Like I haven't drinking since the new year. I haven't drank since the new year. Um, and even before that, like I didn't really drink much last semester. Um, and even in those like periods where I don't drink, I just, like that, like desire to want to have a drink is always there. And it's like, it's situational too. Like when the weekend pops up, part of my brain is like, there's just like some random trigger and it's like, ooh, the gas station's not far away. We could just get a 4 pack. 4 pack won't hurt anybody. Um, and I've resisted the temptation, you know. And I haven't, I mean, I mentioned earlier that I'd been buying those like THC drinks. I've had like three this year. Um, they're pretty nice, you know. And I feel like it's easier for me to moderate myself with them. I just like drink a drink like I normally would. Uh, and it's not like you're like buying, a pack of edibles or like fucking a cart THC or not THC, like the like dab pens essentially. So I feel like it's a little bit easier to moderate. I still have to be careful with it though. Uh, but I have been good with it. And it's been nice. It is nice to be high every now and then. I will say that. But I'm always like wary of it. I'm like scared of being addicted, even though I know that I already am. You know, um, just because I've seen what it can do, which sucks to say. And I know I haven't had it as bad as a lot of people have, and for that I'm grateful. Um, but it still sucks seeing shit. You know, um, because it like lasts forever. Like all of like the negative emotions and feelings I have towards weed or anything like that from like my own personal experience, and then not being able to control it. Like I was thinking about, when I'm like 50 or 60 one day, those are experiences that I'm gonna have to look back on, and I'm still like struggling to, overcome. I wouldn't say overcome, but like, just come to terms with like, kind of what my tendencies are and like the kind of person, or maybe not the kind of person, but like, the influence that my biology has on my body and mind, and it feels unfair sometimes. Um, which is also like, and also said that like, I haven't had it as bad as a lot of people, and I haven't. A lot of people have it way worse, and a lot of people are in the shit. Like the stuff that I'm talking about is like what their life is. Um, and it's like where I live. I've I've done psychedelics. I've smoked weed, but I've never done anything past that. I've been offered cocaine. I never did coke. Um, I didn't like I could see the danger, you know. Like even just like being near it, and I was like, it just didn't give good vibes, you know. And so somehow I was able to say no, and I'm thankful that I did, you know, because it could be so much worse right now. But yeah, you know, I don't want to. You know, part of what scares me is like, you know, that feeling that like I am prone to these things, and then you know it actually happening, and then in like 20 years, you know, I have to look back on that experience, you know, and I don't want to do that, you know, I don't want that to happen. Which also makes me realize that, you know, I'm living a lot of my life in fear. Not that like it's not bad to be afraid of those things, because you know they can be, they often are most of the time very destructive, you know, for your life. Uh, and so I mean it's rational to be afraid of them. But even just outside of that, you know, I have a fear of like not achieving the dreams and goals that I set out for myself. Um, and not even in like the sense of like, you know, it scares me and so it like motivates me. It just scares me, dude. And sometimes it's like a paralyzing fear. Uh, and you know, it's kind of hard to cope with, you know. And I'm trying to discover the tools and whatever I need to cope with it, but it's rough. And so like, you know, I mentioned at the beginning of the video that a lot of this will be, you know, me asking questions and things like that that I don't really have the answer to. Um, and so I would say that, you know, if you're watching this and you're still watching this and you have advice, you know, like, and you're willing to share, because you know this is like this is personal stuff, you know. So I'm not, you know, if you don't want to share, you don't have to. Uh, Obviously, you don't have to, but you know, like I have a hard time coping with like stress too, um, which is also, you know, I'm not gonna blame my biology, but I didn't really grow up with people that had those kind of tools, you know, had that kind of mindset, you know, and I'm trying to develop it right now. I think that's kind of why, not even kind of, I know it's um, why I am into like philosophy and religion and things like that, because I'm looking for just like something to help ground me, you know, and I haven't found it yet, unfortunately. Um, and I'm searching, and I'll find it one day, you know, whatever that is. Uh, and then this kind of, I'm gonna say, segues into like the suicide aspect of like what this kind of stuff is. Um, and so this is another disclaimer, you know, if you're uncomfortable with that kind of stuff, or you know, trauma related to it or anything like that, feel free to get out of here. You know, close the video. I'm not gonna make you stay, and I would urge you not to if it is something that, if it is a sensitive topic, you know. Um, and I'll start out with this. I was because I have members of my family that have attempted suicide, none successful, thankfully. Um, but what I wanted to start out with was, you know, if you have somebody in your family that has attempted suicide, or you know it was successful, um, you statistically, and like I've read, I remember actually really getting into like the studies behind this stuff, for a little bit. You're 5 times more likely to either one, have suicidal ideations yourself, two, attempt suicide, or three, successfully commit suicide. You know, um, and so if you did have someone in your family that has, and you didn't know that, I'm sorry for saying it. I didn't want to put that into the air, but I feel like it's an important thing to see for sure. I feel like it's good to understand when you're at risk for something, even if it doesn't feel like it. And I've never attempted suicide. Um, I would say that I've probably had suicidal ideations at one point. I never, I never thought about how I was gonna kill myself. I never planned anything out or anything like that. It was really just like, I was just feeling down. And I mean, I would also say that I think this is backed by science too, and not I hate saying that, like, backed by science, because I feel like when you start like trying to explain everything with science, or like reinforce your own ideas with that, you're just living in a world of facts, and facts are depressing a lot of the time. You know, um, and it also, like, I feel like part of that is like the reason why I struggle with like religion and faith in the first place, is that, like, it's hard for me to just like believe. Um, and I'll segue into that a little bit here in a minute. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I've had like suicidal ideations before. Um, Nothing ever came of it, and it didn't last for very long, and I haven't really since then. I will say this, with like the whole, this is what I was gonna talk about with the religious like aspect of this, and like why it's hard to believe. Um, like, there's, I feel like we've probably all heard of what NDEs are, and if you haven't, an NDE is just a near death experience. Um, and it's essentially like, people getting into car crashes, or just like bad things happening to people, and they almost die, uh, and they, like, go to the other side, but then they come back somehow, some way. I don't know the science behind it. I don't even know if there is science behind it. Uh, but something happens. Um, and there's a part of me that, like, almost fantasizes about having an NDE, just so I can, like, see what's there and come back and live my life knowing that I don't have to believe in something that could turn out to be false. You know, um, not saying that I want to die, because that's not what I'm saying. It's just like I'm looking for a definite answer. And whenever like people have these NDEs, it they always, the one thing they say is it's just love. You know, it's like everything is love. It's the most loving experience you could ever have. Um, and it sounds pretty awesome. uh, but I don't want to die. I love the life that I'm living right now. You know. Um, but yeah, and like part of what I wanted to go into with this kind of stuff is how, like, other people can affect your psychology. You know, inadvertently. Um, I didn't ask. I didn't ask to have substance abuse in my family, or suicide, or anything like that. I didn't decide that. But it happened, And now I have to deal with the consequences of, it'd be awfully easy for me to become an addict, Like I think about it sometimes because in where I live, there's a decent amount of homeless people. And a lot of homeless people cope with being homeless by taking drugs. And so I see needles and things like that on the ground a lot. And I'm just like, damn, like, it'd be really easy for that to be me, you know? Uh, and I don't want it to be, and it's terrifying. Like, I think about, like, sometimes I'll just, like, think about, like, in my head, it's just like, and I don't really even have, like, I feel like I have a little bit of aphantasia, Like, when aphantasia is essentially not being able to, like, picture stuff in your head, And there's, like, degrees to it. If you, like, fully have aphantasia, you have no, you don't have, for as far as I know, from what I've like the videos I've seen and like what I've read about it, you don't have any pictures. There's no words, no anything in your head. You know, all you have is the world that you see, which is kind of crazy. I don't really understand how that works. Uh, and then there's degrees to it, and I don't like in terms of like some people can think in their head, words, but there's no pictures, and that's kind of where I am. I can like visualize stuff a little bit. I can't visualize things in color. And if I do have like a picture in my head, it's blurry, like black and white. Um, and I can't. There's not like a ton of detail, And most of what I think is just like monologue, really just words, but not even like visual, like words. I'm not like reading. I'm just like talking in my head. Um, but every now and then, I'll have a little bout where for some reason I can like visualize things. And whenever I'm thinking about like what my life would be like if I like did do drugs and like was homeless and things like that, it's a little bit too visceral. Uh, um, and then I'll like come back to reality and be like, let me think about something positive. And it's just like, what do I think about? I just try and tell myself I'm not, you know, homeless, a drug addict, things like that. But then it's like, like what I was trying to say is like I can't come back and just like start like picturing like how good my life is. I just have to like like talk to myself about it in my head. But for some reason, I can like visualize my life in like a negative way sometimes, uh, which is weird, kind of rough sometimes. This video, I think it's probably about 20 minutes right now. I checked it, I mean, about 5 minutes ago, and it was 15. Oh, 28. This may be kind of long, and also I've been working on this same thing for a while. Uh, haven't really made much progress, but yeah. And so, like, just like we got to be wary, you know, our like our brains, especially when they're developing, are so fragile and so like moldable, and they still are. We can still we can be different, you know. And like I have a lot of if you looked at my like YouTube feed on like my normal channel because I don't watch videos on this channel that I post, and even the algorithm on this one is stupid because I'll just scroll through and see what videos it recommends me, and it's like Mr. Beast and like bullshit like that. Uh, but um, like on my normal YouTube, it's like well now it's some RuneScape stuff because I've been playing a little bit of RuneScape. Uh, but still, the majority of it is it'll just be like this video found you right when you needed it, and like sometimes I click them, but a lot of times I just like it's a fucking it's obviously a clickbait title, and it just talks about like how like how self aware you are, and this self awareness is a superpower and shit like that. Uh, and I would say I'm a pretty self aware individual. Um, but at what cost is what is my argument to that. Um, and I'm not like exceptionally self-aware. I can see my problems, but that doesn't mean I always do anything about them. you know, uh, and so yeah, that's like what a lot of my YouTube content is. Um, philosophy or like spirituality and things like that. And I feel like it gets muddied a lot. You know, and so it's hard. Like I'm looking for an answer, but the answer lies in experience, and I know that, and I tell myself that every day. But I'm stuck in this loop of like, maybe I'll watch a video and then I'll like be like, oh, you know, that's not how it works. That's not how it works, man. Um, and if you once you if you like get into psychology and you study it, a lot of the time, from what I've come to realize, is that at the end of the day, you know, there's different like life views or worldviews, maybe I should say. You have existentialism, nihilism, absurdism, all the isms, um, and eventually they all come around to the same thing. You know, life sucks, which I don't really believe life sucks. There's shitty aspects to life for sure. Um, but it's like they all come around to the idea that like life is suffering and you just got to do it. Just doing the thing is like the end piece of advice for like all philosophy is just do it, just experience. You know, and for as much philosophy content as I've consumed, I still haven't gotten that concept through my head. And so even me just saying that is kind of hypocritical. Um, and maybe I just needed to say that and put it out loud and into the ether so that you can know that I'm a hypocrite too. You know, because I wouldn't say I ever like explicitly call myself a hypocrite. Um, but for as much like of that content as I consume, you would think that I would have a better grasp on like reality and life. Uh, not that everybody, not that I should, and not that I'm like obligated to, have like a firm grip on my life. Mm. Actually, I would argue that that's the only thing I should have. You know, maybe, but even then, it's like I want to argue with myself on that. I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, it's just you got to experience it, and the it is subjective, but the advice is objective. I would argue. You know, like your it could be whatever it is you need it to be. Your it could be talking to that girl that you've been wanting to talk to, or the guy, or playing that sport, or doing that drawing, or buying that car, or selling the house, or whatever it is. It's just like you're what you're scared of, and I'm not talking like phobias, like clowns or spiders or shit like that. You know the steps that you need to take to go forward, and you know that they scare you. And that fear is what's holding me back. I'm essentially just talking to myself right now. Um, and it's like what are my goals? My goals are eventually. Um, I gotta focus on the drawing a little bit more, but eventually I would love for this to be a stable source of income, like the YouTube shit. Um, that'd be awesome. I gotta be better about posting more consistently, I'd argue. And also probably adding hashtags every now and then in my videos. you know, uh, just I'm not trying to get my head in the frame. Just to populate it on more people's feed. But I'm not trying to invade people's personal space like that. Your feed is your algorithm is precious to you. You know. Um, and then like a part of me is like, yeah, who do I think I am? You know, who do I think I am? Adding hashtags to my video to make more people see it. But that's the game. That's the rat race. Uh, and then I want to do tattooing as well. Because if if I yeah, let's say hypothetically, I did make it on YouTube, dude, I would be a hermit. You know, I would never leave my place, and that wouldn't be good for me. I need something tangible. Not that it wouldn't be tangible in like that sense, but I need something like that will like force me to leave my house, because if I will stay here forever if I let myself. Which goes back into the the you got to experience it thing. And I'm introverted. I'm a homebody, uh, which isn't really much of an excuse. I'd say it's definitely that thinking right there is part of what's holding me back. Not that like introverts and extroverts aren't a thing. Some people do have more outgoing personalities, um, but it's definitely a limiter. You know, and a bad one, a not so great one. And so if there's something that you feel like you've been putting off, and you know what it is, you know, you can lie to me, you can lie to your spouse, your girlfriend, your brother, your sister, but you know that not everything's okay sometimes. Um, and that in itself is okay. Not everything is always going to be okay. Shit happens. Bad shit happens. Damn, this really is just self therapy. Um, I remember watching this. There's this YouTube channel called Natural Hypertrophy, and it's this French guy. I'm specifically saying that he's French because he's this jack dude, but he has like the strongest French accent of all time. But his videos are sick. Uh, they're definitely more geared towards like males that go to the gym that also like anime. Uh, but um, he does video essays that are like 3 hours long sometimes, uh, and he has a lot of good information on his channel. But he did this one. I almost lost my train of thought for a second. So I was like, as I was explaining it, I was trying to think of where I was going with it, but I remembered. Um, he has this one video where he talks about Berserk and the ideology or the philosophy of guts. Uh, and if you've never heard of Berserk or read it or seen it, Guts is the main character. Um, and I'm not gonna talk about what he talks about in the video all the way. But one of the like the things that I took out of the video was Guts's perspective on the world, essentially, and that he's what Mr. Natural Hypertrophy described as a active pessimist. And so you have, if you like, looked at an XY graph, you have the four quadrants, and you had pessimism on one side and optimism on the other side. It would be like top left, active pessimism, bottom left, passive pessimism, top right, active optimism, bottom right, passive optimism. And, I feel like they're kind of self explanatory. But the active pessimism, he argued in the video, was the best out of the four. Because, looking at the world in a pessimistic way, you're essentially preparing yourself for any shit that hits the fan, you know? And then the active aspect of it is like, taking those steps for when shit does hit the fan, you've already prepared. And then a passive pessimist would just be like, like the nihilist, essentially. Somebody that's like, the world is shit, fuck it, we're all fucked anyway, so what's the point of doing anything? That's the passive pessimist. And then the active optimist would be, you see the good in everything, You see the good things that people are doing, you expect like good results and things like that. And you're also taking the steps to, better the world more than you already think it is. But the flaw in that he was saying is that, you're not preparing yourself for when shit does go down. Which I'd agree with, I feel like. I feel like that's pretty rational. And I would say that I'm probably more of a pessimist than anything, cynical at times. And I need to work. I tend to be pretty passive though, so I need to work on like the active aspect of it. I got to get back in the gym. I got a lot of stuff that I have to do, And thinking about it sometimes stresses me out, but I have to think about it. Nobody else is going to think about it for me, So, and I don't even remember where I was before that, but we're probably 40 minutes in. 42. This may be a long video. Honestly, I don't even really have too much else to talk about, but I want to finish the drawing. Because what was the title of my last video? It was either finish your drawings or finish what you started. You'll thank me later. John. So I have to finish it, But yeah, so like from where I'll go with this is, I'll ask you guys for advice, what are things, if you have experience with substance abuse or anything that I've mentioned in the video, even down to like the philosophical aspect of it, from like what I just talked about with like the guts and things like that. If you have any advice, I'd love to hear it. Any insight, or you need to just like comment something and talk. Do that too. I'm not gonna stop you. I'll reply. Because like at the end of the day, I'm here. I may be a long way away. I may not be that far. You could also be living in the same city I'm living in. I guess it's possible. Unlikely, I'd imagine. I always get pimples in the same spot. I gotta drink more water. I think my water bottle's empty. It also looks like I'll be staying up all night again. Whoopsie. This is bad. Bad news bears. Yeah, man. I'm just trying to figure it all out. I hope my hand isn't really in the way. I'm just trying to hold this paper down because it's being disagreeable. And it does kind of feel weird. Weird being this vulnerable on camera, don't know if it's even really helping. You know, it could be. I mean, this is stuff that I mean, I need to talk about, for me at least. You know, and I do have people that I can talk to. Um, Now, do I? Not often. Not as much as I should. But we're working on it. Kind of. This is part of me working on it. You know, I'm saying the words at least, and talking to myself, and like kind of answering my own questions, but not really. You know, or okay, I'll ask this. This is the one that's really holding me back, and it's the experience one. You know, really just like, dude, sometimes I just don't want to leave my house. Um, I do have a date on Saturday with this chick, and so I will be leaving my house for that, which is good for me. Um, we're going to a bar, which I don't really like bars. I'll be honest, but I'll tough it out. I'll tough it out. Um, and hopefully it goes good. I don't think it'll go bad. Uh, maybe I need a maybe this is the time to deploy the active pessimism mindset. Let's think of all the ways that it could go bad and how we can handle them if they do. No, I'm not going to do that. It'll be a good time, you know. Uh, but yeah, like the experience thing, you know, is if anybody watching this, if you've made it this far, you're a fucking soldier. You know, I appreciate you a lot. Uh, but yeah, if any of you have also been in the same boat, where it's like, you know, you struggle just like going out and like doing things, making friends, you know, having experiences, and you have any advice to give me, like, don't hold back. I need some advice, you know. Uh, yeah, we're not even anywhere near finished with this. I'm gonna be honest with you. uh, it is getting a little bit smoky. I think I have some blending stumps somewhere. I feel like if I used them more often, I could get some really nice values going. I don't use them that often. I don't even know where they are, if I'm being honest. They're probably somewhere in one of these drawers. I do know where they are, but I'm not gonna get them out. I darkened this part up right here because I want to add some shading here, but it wasn't dark enough beforehand to really like show the contrast. But it is now, so we're gonna get in there. Um, yeah, man, life's rough sometimes. Uh, and I'm here if you need it. You know, I'm not gonna give you my number or anything like that, but like, you know, feel free to comment. You know, if you're struggling with something, I'll respond. I promise. I get a notification when I hop on, and it'll like tell me who commented and all that kind of shit. So feel free to just rant if you need to. Um, I did think about doing like a live drawing sometime. I don't really know how many viewers I would get or anything like that. Uh, but if that's something that you think you'd be interested in, and then you'd be able to just ask me questions, things like that, or I could ask you guys questions. We could just talk and chill and hang out. I think it'd be pretty fun. Um, it'd be this would be the exact this would be what you would be seeing, I imagine, because I don't have like. I mean, I guess I could maybe try and like figure out something with the webcam on my computer to where you can see my face, but my tripod is in front of my computer currently. Um, so honestly, I probably wouldn't. I'm not really gonna try and figure that out. I'll probably just leave it like this if I did do something live. If that's something you guys would be interested in, I feel like it could be kind of fun. It'd probably be like my average viewers would probably be zero, you know. Um, but it's something that I could do and sit down for a couple hours with. Because a lot of times I like this video is almost an hour long, 51 minutes, and so that's a lot of time. But if it's live, you know, you could join, get a Sammy, sit down and chill, and then leave. And maybe by the time you come back or you're not doing whatever it is you were doing, I'm still going. It could go for as long as I want it to, essentially. Because like an hour long video is a big commitment for you. It's not so much for me because I'm just sitting here talking. Um, and so like, a lot of times when if like you see an hour long timestamp, you have to like be committed if you want to watch it. uh, and I know I'm not there yet. You know, I don't really know what I'm doing in this drawing. Uh, like where am I going with this? Where's this going? I don't know what I'm gonna do. But yeah, fun topics. Substance abuse. We love it. Okay, we don't love it. I was being sarcastic. But yeah, man, we don't get to pick. We don't get to choose. We don't get to choose our environment, our experiences, a lot of times. You know, that's what we work towards. We want to have that control. And you only have so much. I want to erase that so bad. I think I have already erased, so I'm just going to do it again. I think it was a while ago. And I said I wasn't going to erase, but I did. Sue me. Yeah, we don't get to choose. I wish we did. No, I don't, though. I love my family. They've done a lot for me. I wouldn't ask for different friends. I wouldn't ask for a different family. I wouldn't ask for a different me, Like who would it's hard for me to imagine who I would be if I wasn't sitting here doing this, you know. Like this is a life I chose to live. I give up a lot of stuff for this. Or at least to be here. Like the military, I mean, unless there's a furlough, it's a guaranteed paycheck. Health insurance, dental, housing. There's not really. I'm trying to think of the cons, and I mean, there's cons in like just the lifestyle, the people you're around. It's a lot of moving. Don't necessarily get to pick your job. You can to a certain extent, especially like a little bit more into your career. You have the option to like change jobs and things like that. But there's a lot of, shut up and do the work kind of thing. Which to a certain extent isn't like, it's not like overly negative, you know? Because there are a lot of like perks to being in the military. but it wasn't the life that I wanted to live. You know, there's a lot of cons. Um, but you know, like pursuing being an artist, I was thinking about it. Yeah, it's a crazy decision to make. Like I broke up with my girlfriend, left a steady, a potentially like career that could have set me up for life, and moved away from my family to pursue being an artist. That's a crazy thing, you know. I'm living it, and we're not gonna like. I'm not sitting here saying like I regret making that decision because I don't, and I'm glad I did. As stressed out as I am a lot of the time, I'm glad I'm sitting where I am. I wouldn't ask to be anywhere else, and so for that I'm grateful. I'm grateful to even be able to think like that. To see the positives, to see the light. Uh, you know, because like a lot of people you talk to, it's like, do you ever say anything positive? Do you ever think about anything positive? And that's part of me getting into the military is like you're surrounded by people like that. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna go get some more coffee and some water. I'll be right back. And I know what you're thinking. He's gonna edit that out, right? I'm not. I refuse. I refuse to edit it out. That was your chance to go pee or to go get your own coffee, go get your own water, or do whatever it is you were gonna do. And if you did do that, you know, I'm happy for you. And if you didn't, and you expected me to cut all that out, you know, I'm not sorry. Uh, I'm trying not to put my head in the frame. What was I even talking about? I was talking about being grateful, I think, and just being grateful to be grateful. The Ouroboros of gratefulness. Uh, yeah, but like, yeah, a lot of there's a lot of negative Nancy's in the military. A lot of people hate their lives, and I will be honest and say I kind of hated my life when I was in the military, but I wasn't out spreading the word, spreading the negative word, you know. Or I wasn't trying to. I probably definitely did it sometimes. I mean, sometimes that's how you bond with people. Is like, oh fuck, this shit's ass, bro. And then they're like, yeah, bro, it's ass. And all of a sudden you're best friends, you know. But you can overdo it, you know. Some people want to complain about everything, want to get a word in every conversation, and all the words are negative. And I just couldn't handle it, you know. I can't be around that. Nobody should have to be around that. Those people should be locked up. Okay, not really, but you know what I mean. Or maybe you don't. No, I don't even know what I mean. Anyway, uh, there's a lot of negativity, so I had to get away from that as well. And here we are. We talked about some rough subjects in this video, But at the end of the day, I'm just happy I get to talk about it, you know? And if you're listening right now, I'm happy you're listening. I'm happy you're even able to listen. I'm happy you're not deaf, you know? And blind. Maybe you are blind and you're just listening. And if so, then you're amazing. Just listening to my voice, it's crazy. That would be crazy. It's an art channel, but I have blind followers. It'd be wild. It'd be sick. Yeah, how about this? If you're not blind, you don't get to watch my videos. You don't get to perceive my videos. Yeah, how about that? Don't like that, do you? What am I doing here? Well, I know what I'm doing. I have it under control. Fuck. Oh, yeah, I hope this video doesn't get taken down. That'd be rough. Um, yeah, because I mean, I don't. I mentioned in, I don't know how long ago this was. It had to have been over 2 weeks ago, I imagine. And it may have been another drawing video. I think it may have just been a me talking video. Um, yeah, it was a video where the thumbnail is like the picture of the trees, but or the picture of the tree covered in snow. But I talked about how in my intro to video class, I was doing, I was making like this like soccer kind of video, and it did end up being pretty sports related, but it was more about existentialism than anything, or at least by the end of it, I was like, oh, this is just like an existential video. Uh, and it's for the class. Um, I'm not like releasing it anywhere, and so I could use copyright content. Uh, and I know that on YouTube, or at least as far as I'm aware, this hasn't happened to me, so I don't really know. It's like a strike system for like copyright infringement, things like that. Uh, and I know, I'm pretty sure you can get multiple strikes on one video, and I know that if I posted it, I would get everything in it is copyright, and so I know I'd probably get like 12 fucking copyright strikes. Cancel my next four, or my next three YouTube accounts. Yeah, dude, even like if this if this channel got taken down tomorrow and I had to make a new one, I imagine none of you would be able to find it. I mean, unless I'd be able to name it the same thing. I don't. I imagine I wouldn't be able to though. And I also imagine that the email associated with this. Well, it's not my email. I don't think. I think it's a different email. Um, but the email associated with this would also be like I wouldn't be able to make another YouTube channel with the same email, maybe, which is kind of fucked. At least let me restart. But I don't know all the ins and outs to it. All I do know is that if I post the video that I made, this channel's done for. Because, like I said, it is completely copyrighted content. But it was for class. It was for educational purposes. But I'm curious though. If I did do a live stream, would I be able to listen to music? Question mark. Because I know like on Twitch or on Kick, maybe that's what I should do. I know on Kick and Twitch you can listen to music. Um, Because like I only really watch one person, and it's this dude named Odablock. He's a he like streams RuneScape, and yeah, he always has like music on in the background, And so like there's no way like can't be copyrighted. What the hell am I doing? I'm just putting lines down. But I don't know about if YouTube works the same way, you know. I could look it up pretty easily. But if I looked it up now, I'd definitely shake the camera. I don't want to do that. I'm also rearranging this weekend. I'm not gonna do a room tour. It would be pretty sick though. But yeah, I'm rearranging. I have some grand plans for what I want the space to look like. I do still have a couple pieces of furniture that I need to get. I don't have a dresser. I have a pseudo. I have like a dresser if you just like took it apart, kind of. And they're like little IKEA boxes essentially. They can just like hold things. Um, and so I have something like that, but I don't have like an actual dresser. Which if I had a dresser, I would have. Sounded like somebody just knocked on my door. If I had a dresser, it would make it a lot easier. I'd have more spaces to store my art stuff. Because right now, a lot of my art stuff is kind of scattered. And so just having a little bit more space for that would definitely help. Maybe one day I'll do a tour. Maybe I'll do it this weekend. It'll give me something to do. I'm probably going to finish up this drawing here soon. I got to think about what I'm going to write. What am I going to write to myself? You know, it's got to be something. What have I been talking about? Substance abuse, suicide. Addiction, a little bit. I feel like the substance abuse and addiction kind of go hand in hand. Uh, Genetics, a little bit. I'm no scientist, but I know genetics can fuck you. uh, to a certain extent, you know. At the end of the day, you know, I do believe we have free will. Sometimes I feel ignorant for thinking that, but I do. You know, I can see all the decisions I make, and I know which ones feel right and which ones feel wrong. And there are times where I do make the right decisions, and there are times where I make the wrong decisions, and I know, you know, and a lot of times you know when you're making them. Yeah, I believe in free will. Free will is a thing. I'm going to write in pen. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Nice bold pen. Oh, I hope the drawing has been in frame. It's been like down here. Yeah, that should be fine. What do I write? What do I write? Tell me. grateful that you're able to be grateful. You gotta keep it lowercase. Can't take yourself too seriously. Yeah, I always try and write my name lowercase for that reason. Don't take yourself too seriously. You know? Not that you shouldn't, you know. But you understand what I mean by that. We all fuck up. We all make bad jokes. We all have stuff that we take too serious, you know? So just relax. Draw. Draw stuff that doesn't look like anything. And maybe nobody's gonna like it. But draw it anyway. And draw with everything you got. But that's all I got for you guys. If you made it this far, I very much appreciate you listening. And if you just need to fucking let some stuff out, feel free to comment. Or just act like I'm there and just say it to me. I don't know if that'll really help, but if you don't want to put it in the comments, I understand. But I appreciate you for listening. And I appreciate you for being you. And be grateful that you're able to be grateful. If you watch this whole thing, be grateful you had an hour to spend watching this. A lot of people don't. But anyway, I hope all is well on you guys' end. And with that, I'm off. Take it easy.